Maya Chen's hands moved with practiced precision as she pulled the delicate sugar threads through the air, creating gossamer thin strands that would form the butterfly wings for her signature dessert. The early morning light filtered through the windows of her family's century-old pastry shop in Shanghai, casting a warm glow on the antique wooden workbench that had served 3 generations of Chen family pastry chefs. The peaceful moment shattered as her brother David burst through the kitchen doors, waving a holographic notification that cast shifting blue light across the walls. "Maya, you need to see this," he exclaimed, his voice trembling with excitement. "The Galactic Culinary Federation sent you an invitation." Maya carefully set down her sugar work, her heart skipping a beat. The GCF was the most prestigious culinary organization in known space, but they had consistently dismissed Earth cuisine as quaint and primitive since first contact 15 years ago. The Federation had never invited a human chef to any of their events, let alone their annual summit. The hologram expanded to reveal an official invitation, the alien script translating itself into Mandarin before her eyes. "Master Chef Maya Chen, your innovative approach to carbohydrate crystallization artistry has caught our attention. We extend an invitation to represent your species at the 247th Galactic Culinary Summit on Station Aramantha." "This has to be a mistake," Maya muttered, reading the invitation again. Her grandmother had taught her the art of sugar work, passing down techniques refined over centuries. Maya had modernized some aspects, incorporating molecular gastronomy and even some alien ingredients, but surely nothing that would interest the GCF. "It's not a mistake," a new voice said. Maya turned to see Ambassador Zixtal, their regular customer, standing in the doorway. The Centaurian's iridescent scales shifted color with amusement. "I may have submitted some recordings of your work to the Federation Council. They were particularly intrigued by your method of incorporating variable crystallization temperatures to create different textures within a single piece." Maya's mind raced with possibilities. The summit was the galaxy's premier culinary event, where new techniques were unveiled and reputations were made or broken. No human had ever presented there, and the pressure would be enormous. The galaxy's elite chefs were known for their dismissive attitude toward primitive Earth cuisine. "The summit begins in 3 weeks, Zixtal continued. "I've arranged transport on my personal vessel, if you're interested." The ambassador's secondary eyes blinked in what Maya had learned was an expression of encouragement. Maya looked around the kitchen that had been her world since childhood. The walls were lined with certificates and awards, but they were all Earth achievements. On the shelf above her workstation sat her grandmother's prized possession, a crystal sugar dragon, its translucent wings seemingly poised for flight. It was a masterpiece of traditional technique, but would such skills mean anything to beings who could manipulate matter at the molecular level? "They expect me to fail," Maya realized aloud. "They want to prove that human culinary arts are as primitive as they believe." She straightened her spine, feeling a familiar determination settle over her. "That's exactly why I have to go." David grinned. "I'll start packing your equipment. The galaxy isn't ready for Chen family sugar work." Maya turned back to her half-finished butterfly, seeing it with new eyes. The techniques passed down through generations of her family weren't just tradition. They were innovation waiting to be recognized. Each delicate strand of sugar contained centuries of human ingenuity, trial and error, artistry and science combined. "Ambassador," she said, her voice firm, "I accept the invitation, but I'll need your help gathering some special ingredients. If I'm going to show the galaxy what human pastry chefs can do, I want to create something they've never seen before." As Maya began planning her summit preparations, she couldn't help but smile at the thought of the upcoming challenge. The galaxy might be expecting a primitive display of simple sugar work, but she would show them that Earth's culinary traditions contain mysteries that even their advanced technology hadn't mastered. The art of dessert making wasn't just about tools or techniques. It was about heart, creativity, and the ability to transform simple ingredients into moments of joy. Little did the Galactic Culinary Federation know They hadn't just invited a pastry chef to their summit. They had invited a revolution in sugar, spice, and everything nice. Station Aramatha's grand culinary hall stretched before Maya like a shimmering jewel box, its crystalline walls refracting light in patterns that made her sugar work look primitive by comparison. Chefs from across the galaxy had already set up their stations, their equipment ranging from familiar-looking ovens to devices that seemed to bend reality itself. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she unpacked her tools. Copper pots handed down through generations, precision thermometers, and her grandmother's favorite sugar-pulling hooks. Next to the quantum molecular assemblers and zero-gravity proving chambers at neighboring stations, her equipment looked like museum pieces. Oh, how quaint! The voice dripped with artificial sweetness. Maya looked up to see Chef Vizara, a renowned Alphian pastry artist whose creations were said to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. I didn't realize the humans would be bringing historical artifacts. Maya forced a polite smile. Sometimes the oldest tools work best, she replied, carefully arranging her ingredients. The small vials of exotic compounds she'd acquired through Ambassador Zixtal were tucked safely away, her secret weapons for later. As she began her preliminary preparations, Maya noticed the subtle shift in the atmosphere around her station. Other chefs would walk by, their expressions ranging from amused condescension to outright dismissal. Some didn't even bother to hide their laughter when she pulled out her hand-cranked sugar spinner. But Maya had expected this. She kept working, losing herself in the familiar rhythms of tempering sugar and preparing her base components. The first phase of her plan was simple: master the basics before attempting innovation. Her grandmother had always said that true artistry grew from a foundation of perfect technique. A small crowd gathered as she began pulling sugar, her movements precise and practiced. The translucent strands caught the light, creating rainbow refractions that drew curious glances. Maya added a pinch of stabilized stellar dust, a gift from Ambassador Zixtal, and the sugar strands began to glow with a soft, pulsing light. Interesting use of thermoluminescent properties, commented a tall, serpentine chef who introduced himself as Seth. But surely you know such simple effects are considered children's fare in modern galactic cuisine. Maya nodded, continuing her work. Sometimes beauty lies in simplicity, she replied, her fingers never stopping their dance with the sugar. As she spoke, she began incorporating threads of dark matter essence into the glowing strands, creating patterns that seemed to shift and change as viewers moved around them. The real test came when she unveiled her first completed piece, a traditional Chinese sugar painting, but with a galactic twist. The delicate scene depicted the Earth rising over the lunar horizon, but as observers watched, the sugar landscape slowly shifted, revealing different perspectives of the same scene from multiple angles simultaneously. "Impossible," whispered Vizara, all traces of condescension gone from her voice. "Sugar crystals can't maintain quantum uncertainty at room temperature." But Maya's creation did exactly that, thanks to careful temperature control and the strategic use of exotic materials. She had spent weeks practicing this technique in secret, combining traditional sugar work with principles of quantum mechanics she'd learned from her research. Word spread quickly through the station. Soon, even the most skeptical chefs were stopping by to study her work. Maya caught snippets of their conversations. Primitive tools, but the results. And perhaps there's more to Earth techniques than we thought. The turning point came when Grandmaster Chef Kithel himself visited her station. The ancient Arcturian's crystalline form shimmed as he examined her sugar work with all 7 of his sensory clusters. "You understand something many have forgotten, young human," he said finally. "True innovation does not always require new tools. Sometimes it simply requires seeing the old ones in a new light." Maya bowed slightly, honored by his words, but also gathering her courage. "Grandmaster," she said, "what you've seen so far is just the foundation. For the main competition, I plan to create something that combines Earth's traditions with the galaxy's future." Phil's crystalline form pulsed with interest. Bold words, especially from a species so new to galactic cuisine. We shall see if you can deliver on such promises. As the first day of the summit drew to a close, Maya carefully packed away her tools, her mind already racing with plans for tomorrow. She had earned their attention. Now she needed to prove that human culinary arts could stand alongside the galaxy's finest. In her quarters that night, Maya pulled out her grandmother's old recipe book, its pages worn with use and love. Next to it, she placed her notes on quantum gastronomy and centimolecular binding agents. Tomorrow, she would begin bridging these two worlds, creating something that would change galactic cuisine forever. But first, she needed to make a call home. Her grandmother would want to hear about this day, and Maya knew she would understand better than anyone the weight of what was to come. After all, she had always said that every great chef stood on the shoulders of those who came before, even if those shoulders now reached across the stars. The third day of the summit began with chaos. Maya arrived at her station to find the culinary hall in an uproar. Several delegates were being rushed to the medical bay, their bodies reacting violently to something they had consumed at the previous night's experimental tasting session. It was the molecular reconstruction process. She overheard one of the medical officers saying, "Something went wrong with the protein realignment in Chef Vizera's quantum soufflé." Maya's attention snapped to the conversation. She had studied the principles of molecular gastronomy extensively before the summit, knowing she would need to understand it to compete. But unlike many of the galactic chefs who relied entirely on advanced technology, she also understood the fundamental chemistry of cooking. Knowledge passed down through generations of Earth chefs who had to work without quantum assemblers or molecular reconstructors. The summit organizers were in a panic. With several prominent chefs incapacitated and others refusing to continue their demonstrations, the entire event was at risk of collapse. Maya watched as Grand Master Kithel's crystalline form flickered with distress as he consulted with his staff. "The problem isn't the molecular reconstruction itself," Maya found herself saying, stepping forward. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. "It's the interaction between the reconstructed proteins and the natural enzymes in different species' digestive systems." Kithel's sensory clusters focused on her. "Explain." Drawing on her knowledge of both traditional cooking and the new techniques she'd learned, Maya walked to the central demonstration area. "When we cook traditionally on Earth, we understand that different heat levels and chemical reactions affect how digestible our food is. The same principle applies to molecular reconstruction, but on a quantum level." She pulled up the molecular diagram of Vizera's soufflé from the previous night's records. "See here. The protein structures were perfectly reconstructed, but they weren't stabilized properly. When they encountered different alien digestive enzymes, they began to break down in unexpected ways." The medical team's instruments confirmed her analysis. Maya continued, her confidence growing as she explained how traditional cooking techniques could be combined with advanced technology to ensure safer molecular gastronomy. "On Earth, we learned these lessons the hard way. Over thousands of years of cooking for different cultures and dietary needs," she explained. "We didn't have the luxury of molecular reconstructors. We had to understand the chemistry of cooking at its most basic level." To demonstrate, Maya quickly prepared a small batch of her stabilized sugar work, but this time she narrated each step, explaining how the principles could be applied to more advanced molecular gastronomy. She showed how traditional temperature control techniques could be adapted to stabilize quantum reconstructed molecules. "Fascinating," murmured Seth, who had slithered closer to watch. "You're suggesting that your species' primitive understanding of cooking chemistry could actually help prevent such accidents in advanced culinary technology." "Exactly," Maya said, warming to her subject. "Think of it like building a house. You can have the most advanced construction technology in the galaxy, but if you don't understand basic structural engineering, the house could still collapse." Felt's crystalline form pulsed with what Maya had learned to recognize as approval. "Perhaps," he announced, "we have been too quick to dismiss Earth's culinary traditions as primitive. There is wisdom in understanding the foundations before pushing boundaries. The crisis turned into an unexpected opportunity. As the medical team worked to treat the affected delegates, Maya found herself conducting an impromptu workshop on traditional Earth cooking chemistry and its applications to modern galactic cuisine. Chefs from across the galaxy gathered around her station, asking questions and taking notes. "But how do you achieve consistent results without quantum measurement tools?" asked a young Proximan chef. Maya smiled, pulling out her grandmother's battered thermometer. "We learn to trust our senses: sight, smell, touch, taste. These are still valuable tools, even in an age of advanced technology. Sometimes, the most reliable sensor is the one that's been calibrated by generations of experience." As the day progressed, Maya realized that the accident had broken down barriers she never could have breached otherwise. The galaxy's finest chefs were beginning to see that Earth's culinary traditions weren't primitive, they were fundamental. And in combining these foundations with advanced technology, entirely new possibilities were emerging. That evening, as she reviewed her plans for the summit's final competition, Maya added several new elements. The crisis had shown her that she didn't need to choose between tradition and innovation. The real art lay in bringing them together. Her grandmother had always said that every disaster in the kitchen was an opportunity to learn something new. Today had proved just how right she was, on a galactic scale. The final competition day arrived with an electric atmosphere on Station Aramantha. After the crisis, the summit had transformed into something unexpected, a fusion of traditional wisdom and advanced technology. Maya stood at her workstation, surrounded by both her grandmother's tools and borrowed pieces of galactic culinary equipment. Her hands moved steadily as she began the complex process of creating her masterpiece. The concept had come to her during a late-night call with her grandmother, who reminded her of an old Chinese saying, "True innovation comes from understanding the past." Maya started with a base of traditional Beijing-style sugar art, but with a twist. She incorporated crushed Centaurian crystal flowers, their molecular structure allowing the sugar to form impossible shapes that held themselves in midair. The traditional dragon pattern she had learned as a child began to take shape, but this dragon seemed to swim through space itself. "Remarkable control of the crystal matrices," observed Chef Seth, who had become something of an ally since the crisis. "But how will you prevent quantum decay at serving temperature?" Maya smiled, reaching for a small vial of iridescent powder. "Watch," she said, sprinkling the powder. A combination of traditional Earth stabilizers and alien compounds over her creation. The dragon's form solidified, its sugar crystal scales catching light from dimensions humans couldn't normally perceive. But the visual display was just the beginning. Maya had spent weeks studying the taste preferences of different species, learning which flavor combinations could be universally appreciated despite vastly different biologies. She began incorporating elements that would appeal to every palate. Arcturian frost spice that caused a pleasant resonance in crystalline life forms, earth vanilla that triggered positive responses in carbon-based species, and a hint of Proximan quantum zest that added a literally time-bending element to the tasting experience. "You're crossing boundaries that shouldn't be possible," Vizera commented, watching Maya work. The Alphine chef had recovered from the previous day's crisis and had developed a grudging respect for Earth's culinary traditions. Sugar crystals shouldn't be able to maintain quantum coherence with organic compounds. "They shouldn't," Maya agreed, carefully adding another layer to her creation, "if you only use modern techniques. But there's something about the imperfections in hand-pulled sugar that actually creates quantum anchoring points. My grandmother discovered it by accident years ago. She just didn't know that's what it was." The dragon was now complete, floating above its plate in a display that combined the best of Earth artistry and alien science. But Maya wasn't finished. She began creating what appeared to be traditional pâté fours, each one a perfect fusion of Earth and alien flavors. As she worked, she explained her process to the growing crowd of observers. "Every culture in the galaxy has some form of celebratory sweet," she said, adding a sprinkle of dark matter essence to a batch of macarons. The ingredients and techniques might be different, but the intention is the same: to create moments of joy and connection. Grandmaster Cthulhu floated forward, his crystalline form refracting the light from Maya's creation in rainbow patterns. "You speak of connection, young human. Show us what you mean." Maya nodded, activating the quantum thermal field she had carefully calibrated. The dragon began to move, its sugar crystal form flowing like liquid starlight. As it circled the display, it began to dissolve, dropping perfectly formed droplets onto each of the petit fours below. When the droplets landed, they transformed each piece into a unique experience calibrated for different alien physiologies. Each piece contains elements of Earth's culinary heritage, Maya explained, but adapted to resonate with different species' perceptions of flavor and texture. When you taste it, you're not just experiencing a dessert. You're experiencing a connection between Earth's past and the galaxy's future. The first taste tests brought gasps of surprise and pleasure from the assembled chefs. For crystalline life forms, the dessert created harmonious resonances throughout their matrices. Carbon-based species experienced flavors that evolved and changed as they ate. Even the energy-based Proximan chefs found their consumption matrices enhanced by the quantum interactions. But it was the human element that truly set Maya's creation apart. Each bite, regardless of the consumer's biology, somehow conveyed a sense of comfort and nostalgia. The same feeling Maya had experienced countless times in her family's kitchen. "How did you achieve this emotional resonance?" Cthulhu asked, his form pulsing with curiosity and what seemed to be delight. Maya touched the worn handle of her grandmother's sugar-pulling hook. "Some things can't be achieved with technology alone," she said softly. "Sometimes you need the imperfections, the tiny variations that come from making something by hand. Those imperfections are what make it real, what make it connect with something deeper than just taste." As the judges moved through their deliberations, Maya realized that she had achieved something more significant than just creating an innovative dessert. She had found a way to bridge worlds, to show that progress didn't mean abandoning tradition, but building upon it to reach new heights. 1 year after the Galactic Culinary Summit, Maya stood in the gleaming atrium of the newly established Earth Galactic Culinary Institute in Shanghai. The building seamlessly blended Earth's traditional architecture with alien technology, much like the fusion cuisine it was created to teach. Through the quantum glass windows, she could see students from across the galaxy practicing traditional sugar-pulling techniques alongside advanced molecular gastronomy. A young Arcturian's crystalline hands moved carefully as they learned to work with pulled sugar, while a human student nearby experimented with quantum flavor matrices. "Quite a change from last year," Ambassador Zixtal commented, their scales shifting through pleased colors as they observed the scene. "The waiting list for admission grows longer each day." Maya nodded, watching a group of students gathering around her grandmother, who was demonstrating the art of traditional mooncake making. The ancient techniques, when combined with new understanding of molecular structures, had revolutionized the way the galaxy approached dessert making. "Did you ever imagine this when you submitted those recordings to the Federation Council?" Maya asked the ambassador with a smile. "I knew there was something special in your work," Zixtal replied, "but I never predicted it would spark such a revolution in galactic cuisine." The changes had come rapidly after the summit. Maya's groundbreaking fusion dessert had won not only the competition, but also the attention of the galaxy's finest culinary minds. Her demonstration of how traditional Earth techniques could enhance and stabilize advanced molecular gastronomy had opened new possibilities in food science. Grandmaster Cthulhu himself had championed the establishment of the Institute, declaring that the future of galactic cuisine lay in understanding and building upon its past. The ancient Arcturian now served as a regular guest lecturer, his crystalline form a familiar sight in the Institute's halls. "Chef Chen," the voice called out. Maya turned to see Vizara approaching, the Alphean chef's former arrogance replaced with collegial warmth. "The quantum sugar-pulling class is about to begin. Would you do us the honor?" Maya followed Vizara to one of the teaching kitchens, where students from a dozen different species waited eagerly. The room was equipped with both traditional Earth tools and advanced alien technology, a physical representation of the Institute's philosophy of fusion and innovation. As Maya began her demonstration, she reflected on how far they'd come. The very techniques that had once been dismissed as primitive were now being studied alongside the most advanced culinary technology in the galaxy. Students learned not just how to use molecular reconstructors, but why traditional techniques worked, the fundamental principles that had guided Earth's culinary evolution. The secret, she told her students as she pulled a strand of sugar infused with dark matter essence, is understanding that every technique, whether it's 10,000 years old or newly invented, has something to teach us. Innovation doesn't mean abandoning tradition. It means building upon it. The Institute had become more than just a culinary school. It was a bridge between worlds, a place where different species and cultures could come together and learn from each other. The prejudices that had once divided them melted away in the face of shared discovery and creation. Maya's grandmother often said that food was a universal language, and now that truth extended across the galaxy. Deserts that combined Earth's traditional techniques with alien ingredients and technology were appearing in high-end establishments throughout known space. Even the most prestigious restaurants on advanced worlds now proudly featured hand-pulled sugarwork alongside their quantum confections. As the day's classes wound down, Maya found herself in her favorite spot, the Institute's rooftop garden, where Earth plants grew alongside alien species in a carefully maintained ecosystem. The setting sun painted the Shanghai skyline in colors that reminded her of her first sugar-pulling lessons in her family's shop. "Penny, for your thoughts," her brother David asked, joining her at the railing. He now managed the Institute's innovation laboratory, where new fusion techniques were developed and tested. "Just thinking about how far we've come," Maya replied, watching a group of students practicing sugar sculpture techniques in the garden below. "And how far we still have to go." David grinned. "Well, the Galactic Culinary Federation just approved our proposal for the first interstellar street food festival. They want us to show them how Earth's street vendors create such complex flavors without molecular reconstructors." Maya laughed, imagining the galaxy's finest chefs learning the secrets of Jiandui and Tanghulu from Shanghai's street vendors. The revolution they'd started wasn't just about high cuisine. It was about celebrating all forms of culinary creativity, from the simplest traditional techniques to the most advanced technology. As night fell and the quantum stars began to shine through the atmospheric dome, Maya felt a deep sense of satisfaction. They had done more than just prove that human culinary arts weren't primitive. They had shown that true innovation comes from respecting and building upon tradition, no matter which world it comes from. The sweet revolution had begun with a simple sugar dragon in a Shanghai pastry shop, but its effects would ripple across the galaxy for generations to come. And somewhere, on a distant world, a young chef of an unknown species was probably already dreaming up the next fusion of old and new, carrying the revolution forward into the future.